Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to episode 238 of the Strength Coach Podcast, the official podcast of Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com, the world's best source for strength and conditioning information, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com. All right, I'm your host, Anthony Arena, and the show notes are located at ContinueFit.com. That's my site. That's where I keep my other podcasts, as well as Strength Coach TV and some other resources. All right, on the StrengthCoach.com Strength Coach Corner, I spoke to Coach Boyle about his article, Sport-Specific Training, Not Again, What Makes a Good Partnership. And that was from a business thread that we had on the site that was talking about just some good business books to read, but we got into some different things with partnerships on that. Good stuff. And then a thread on, is there really any good or bad posture? For the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment, Rachel Cosgrove continues her series on making money in your business. Today's part 3, and that is getting clients to spend more money. There will be no functional movement system segment today because next episode, I'm doing a special episode. I'm putting all of the Gray Cook series that he did on functional capacity screen. So today would have been part 7, but I'm putting them all in one big episode so you guys can kind of get the gist of the whole thing together. For the Train Heroic data-driven coaching segment, Adam Doughty talks to Tim Robinson about stress and adaptation and the Hickson protocol. All right, for the MariGold Foods Hit the Gym with a Strength Coach segment, I got on Guy Massi. He's the owner and director of operations for Massi Machado in Cortland Manor, New York, pretty close to me in White Plains. He's also an advisor to Tsunami Bar, so I wanted to get him on. We talked about his upcoming workshop in November at the Perform Better Functional Training Institute. And we talked about his work that he did with the Philadelphia Eagles, the Tsunami Bar. We're going to talk to him about oscillation and amplitude training. So really interesting stuff there. I really don't know anybody else that's kind of talking about that. We talked about dynamic capacity and so much more. Lots of interesting stuff coming up from Guy in a little while. Remember, for the MariGold Bars discount, you can put in the code StrengthCoach10 at MariGoldBars.com and you'll get $10 off your first order. All right, lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, now it's time for the StrengthCoach.com Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle. StrengthCoach.com, the world's best source for strength and conditioning information. You can try StrengthCoach.com out for 3 days just $1. You'll have access to all the articles, videos, and programs, as well as the best forum on the net. It's the only place to have full access to Coach Boyle. He's on every day, even when he's in China, which he just got back from. You can check it out at StrengthCoach.com. Click the link. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Ian. How are you?
Good. Have you recovered yet from, that was who's your travel agent? Because you went to China, flew to Long Beach, did your talk, took a red eye home.
I am my travel agent, and that was all planned in terms of, I hate wasted time. And so I was thinking, all right, I needed to get back. Mark had lacrosse tryouts on Saturday. Michaela was going to college on Saturday. I needed to do the Long Beach Summit. And I needed to get this thing done in China, which was the Tuesday and Wednesday of that week. So it all actually went pretty smooth.
Wow.
It's just, the travel is tough in terms of, I flew to Shanghai on Sunday night, which puts me in Shanghai Monday night, presenting Tuesday, Wednesday, flying back on Thursday to California, and then presenting Friday in California, flying back on Friday night. So
yeah, most people your age wouldn't,
Watch the your age thing, okay?
Coach,
you look very youthful, but you're not that far from mine.
Yeah, true. That's because when you don't have kids, that's what happens. Coach, sport-specific training. Again, you actually posted an article that just went super viral for, from our perspective, hundreds of shares, 5,000 views on Instagram. This is just something like you were talking about. I keep hoping we get past this, but I'm not sure. What made this, why did you write this?
Summer conversations with parents. I'm talking to parents, and because so you look at Mark plays hockey and plays lacrosse. So lately it's been lacrosse parents and people saying stuff like, oh, I don't want him to lift weights. I just want him to do footwork and stuff that's going to help lacrosse. And it's just like, oh God, I can't believe I'm still going through this. And I can't believe that we haven't got past this. So I just thought, oh, this would make a good post in terms of, you realize that even though I've written a couple of different articles about, sports specific training is a myth was one, and I forget the name of the other one, but realizing I've done that already and you just haven't even made a dent in the general market, you realize that, wow, I keep needing to get this information out. Like the next one I'm going to repost is the Want to Suck This Winter one about running cross country, because it's amazing. I'll probably have 10 conversations in September about, I was going to send the kid to the gym, but he decided to run cross country to get ready for hockey. And I'll just be like, want to throw myself out the window.
Yeah, it is amazing to kind of keep that, this keeps coming up. But what I wanted to ask you was, you mentioned in the article, you've trained Kayla Harrison. She's Olympic medals, judo. Allie Reisman, gymnastics. Hillary Knight, hockey. Rich Hill, LA Dodgers. Kayla Trainer, which is women's lacrosse. Jack Eichel, NHL. Coach, would you, though, like if I said if they were all going to come to, because I feel like that article, the you Learn to Speak Coach, should be linked to this article, because would you still say, like, if the next 3 months you're going to train all these guys, would you put them in the same group and pretty much doing the same thing?
Yeah, I really would.
Okay.
Because it'd be so little. It's kind of like, okay, maybe Allie's going to do a little more stability work because we had that great thread on gymnastics. And she might be the only one. No, I shouldn't say it. Rich Hill.
Rich, yeah.
A little extra shoulder work in there for a baseball pitcher. But the fundamental things, when you think of the major things that we're going to do, everybody's going to roll. Everybody's going to stretch. Everybody's going to do their sort of mobility activation. Everybody's going to do their dynamic warm-up. Everybody's going to do plyos and med ball. Everybody's going to strength train, and everyone's going to do some kind of split squat, and everybody's going to do some kind of one leg straight leg deadlift, and everybody's going to push, and everybody's going to pull. And I always said, this is the basis of our kind of MBSE progression regression system in terms of looking, okay, if I had that group training together, 10 of them, it might be like, okay, we're going to push today, and 6 or 7 of you who don't have problems with your shoulders are all going to do bench press. The 4 or 5, Rich Hill's going to do dumbbell bench press. Allie Reisman might do a standing cable press, but they're all filling in the press box, the horizontal. How about the press box? That sounds a little words there, but everybody's going to do that kind of horizontal press motion in the same way. Knee dominant, there might be no difference. Everyone would probably do the same knee dominant movement. Hip dominant, everybody do the same hip dominant movement. Then when we got to upper body pulling, that vertical pull, there might be some people doing pull downs and some people doing chins, but it really wouldn't. It changes so minimally. Even in the beginning, the conditioning, okay, week 1, we're all going to do some tempos. We're going to run up. We're going to run, jog, or run, walk, rather. So, yeah, I would say to somebody, if you came into our facility and watched and you didn't know what anybody did, with the exception of the obvious outlier, an Allie Reisman, somebody like that, based on size, you'd know what she did. Everybody else, if you saw Kayla Trainer and Hillary Knight stand next to each other, and I said, okay, who plays hockey, who plays lacrosse? I would bet 50% of the people would be right, 50 would be wrong. Because they look very, very similar. They're both about 5'10". They're both probably more than, they're over 150 pounds, I'll say that much. And they're both in amazingly great shape. But you wouldn't be like, oh, that's the lacrosse player, that's the hockey player. It just wouldn't come out that way at all unless you knew the faces.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Coach, there was an article where I don't want to get into the article that Kristen Talon had linked to. It was about posture. But I just kind of wanted to go over your thoughts. It was the idea, like, is there a good posture or a bad posture? You were saying it's based on the task. And this is a controversial subject because a lot of people, I know you had said, look, this guy's trying to stir the pot, but still, it is, people talk about You got to improve your posture. You're going to improve your posture. I know in golf it was super important because if you're not flat, if you're not straight, if your back's not straight, you do lose the ability to rotate. So certainly you need perfect posture in that task. Talk to us about your thoughts on this idea about good and bad posture.
Well, my whole thing is, as we said, it's just another pot stirrer because it actually was a video versus an article, and it was a guy like almost squatting to open the refrigerator, and holding perfect form, and then squatting in a chair. And it's just the typical shit that people do on the internet for attention. Because I get it. Yes. Do you need perfect posture to open your fridge? No. Do you need perfect posture to get out of a chair? No. But if we're talking about loading your spine, lifting, yeah, there's a good and bad posture. If we're talking about general postures in which to pick things up off of the ground, yeah, there is a good posture. If we're talking about looking at somebody standing there in the supermarket line, is there good posture? Yes. Is there bad posture? Yes. So that kind of stuff, it really irks me. And there was a similar thing on Twitter today, which I thought was really interesting. And the guy said something to the effect of shut down muscles that I have lived through. And he went through like VMO, TVA, glutes. And it was like, yeah, I get it. But all of that stuff, even though someone may have overemphasized transverse abdominis at some point. Someone may have overemphasized vastus medialis at some point. Someone may have overemphasized multifidus at some point. All of those things were positive things that made us learn more and get better. It made us study anatomy. It made us understand the body more. And maybe the end result is that, well, it wasn't probably exactly what that person said, but it was still a really big step in the right direction. And I guess that's what I just feel like there's professional shit disturbers out there that are dying to show everybody how smart they are. And I think what they generally do is just show people what a dick they are, excuse my language, but I used it in every Perform Better keynote anyway, so I might as well use it here. Instead of looking and thinking, wow, these were really great. Because for someone to look at, like, you look at Paul Hodges and the Australian stuff and the transverse abdominis thing and Paul Chek before that, and that really helped us understanding core training, even though we may understand now that my father used to always say, right church, wrong pew. We might not have been exactly where we were supposed to be, but it got us away from sit-ups, and it got us away from doing 1,000 crunches, and it got us thinking much more about, gee, what are these muscles' actual function? What do these muscles do? How do they work? So I guess that's my problem, even with posture. Yeah, like upper cross, lower cross, it has turned out to not be that simple than the simple Yanda stuff. But that stuff was, I mean, landmark work in its time by a really brilliant guy that somebody's now making fun of, like, oh, I'm way smarter than Yanda. You're like, shit, you hadn't even thought about that stuff until you read the Yanda stuff, and now all of a sudden you're making fun of it. So I guess that's my beef with that.
Yeah. Good stuff. And, like even the Yanda stuff, I think that's a hypothesis as well, that he, off of his research and, over time, everybody else has the advantage of time and more experiments and more in the trenches work. So
right. It goes back to the Myers thing, which I love. When Myers gets up, I think every talk he's ever done, he starts out with that idea of 50% of what I'm going to tell you is wrong. I just don't know which 50%. We're going to be wrong. If we're trying to learn, we'll be wrong at least as many times as we're right. But we will learn. We will get smarter. If we weren't, we would it would still be the big three, and we'd be doing squat, bench, and deadlift or whatever, and squat, bench, and power clean from the floor. And we're not. And we're not because people ask questions and pushed envelopes, and sometimes they push them too far, sometimes they push them in the wrong direction, but you still want people pushing them.
Absolutely. Coach, let's go to business because Tara Weaver had just been asking people for some books about business. And you and I and Elspeth, and we kind of recommended some books, and then it kind of got into this idea about partnerships. And at the end of the day, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on this. I mean, I think the number one thing, like I said in the thread, I think, I just posted episode 57. I just filmed 6 more places. all kinds of places, whether it's 22,000 square feet or 750 square feet, personal training, groups, any partnership. The best partnerships that I have found are clearly defined roles that don't overlap. That's the bottom line. I said, think Coach Boyle and Bob Hansen, Eric Cressy, Pete Dupuis, Krista and Mike Duran, Mark Fisher, and Michael Keeler. I just, like, how much more, like, because, obviously I mentioned you, and you guys have an amazing partnership. You guys don't do anything. I think one thing that he didn't put in there was, I think also when you have those clearly defined roles, you have to respect that the other person in that role. So if you thought Bob was horrible at what he does, that partnership wouldn't work. And if he thought you were horrible at what you do, it wouldn't work. You can't just take two people and say, hey, we're both trainers. Mike, why don't you do the accounting and I'll do the marketing? It doesn't work like that because neither one of us really knew what we were doing in that. It wouldn't work. Talk to me about this idea about partnerships because it's come up a few times.
I think the big thing that happens with partnerships is that, as you said, you might not always agree with how the other person is doing their job, but you have to realize when you've delineated roles and assigned that job that you have to let that person do their job. You have to butt out. Sometimes I would look and think with Bob, like, oh, I think we should be doing it this way. And then I realized it's not my job. If Bob wants to do it that way, that's up to Bob. And I think that's sometimes where even well-designed partnerships with at least delineated roles don't work because suddenly one person decides, yeah, my role is maybe to, I always look at like Bob and I, it's sort of like restaurant, front of the house, back of the house. One of us is managing people. One of us is out back making the food kind of thing. And that's Bob and my relationship. I'm in charge of programming. I'm running the floor. I'm hiring the coaches. I'm doing all that stuff. He's handling all the money, numbers, business, marketing. And if I'm coming in his office every day saying, hey, I think we should do this, we should do this, you should do this way, that does not create a really good partnership. It starts to generate animosity. So although I will make suggestions, if Bob said, nope, this is the way I want to do it, it's like, okay, your job, you do your job the way you want to do your job. I'll do my job the way I want to do my job. And hopefully that means the business operates effectively.
A question on that. First of all, the marketing piece, it could be, is it front of the house or is it back of the house? Because if you're the face and there's this, and you're out there, you're putting yourself out there. That's an interesting one to decide who's going to take care of that.
Yeah, well, I think the difference is I'm always marketing because I always say I have to spend a couple hours every day being Mike Boyle, sort of playing that role on the internet or wherever it is. And I get it. I guess I'm talking about more sort of the external marketing in terms of, are we going to be talking to coaches? Are we going to go to this, whatever, fitness fair or this town event or whatever it is? And again, I think sometimes I'm always going to be trying to market the Mike Boyle brand so that it's always recognized as a quality brand. And I think that sort of in some ways transcends Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning, this sort of brick and mortar entity. But I think the bigger piece of the puzzle is just to know that if it's somebody else's job, you have to know when to butt out. You have to know when to let that person do their job. And you go focus on doing your job instead of kind of hanging around and critiquing like, oh, yeah, well, I don't like the way you do this and I don't like the way you do that. I think that's the problem that we run into in these kind of partnership settings where you have one person who says, I don't want the day-to-day responsibility of the bullshit that you have to do, but I will take the day-to-day responsibility of giving you shit about how you do it.
Yeah. Well, the thing, too, is you guys are successful. And if things started to go south, then there might be more of a problem. Like, well, look, Bob, or, it's not working. Or Mike, no, look, you pissed off the corn people again, and now we're not getting anybody in here, whatever.
Right. And that happens. Like Bob will come out some days and say, I was here yesterday and you weren't, and the training wasn't good. I watched, whatever it was, the trainers weren't attentive. There were too many people in the break room eating, not enough people on the floor paying attention to what they're supposed to be doing, people letting interns take their groups. He'll say that. I think there's a difference between input and interference. How's that?
Excellent.
And input and nitpicking. So, you can have input, but I'll give you a really good example. One time I remember I was watching Bob, like getting ready to go to the bank. And he had a pile of checks. I mean, a lot of checks. And he was like stamping the checks, whatever, signature and writing the stuff in on a deposit slip. And we had just had a Thomas Plummer talk. And I was like, Bob, why don't you get a check scanner? And he was like, I don't trust those things. And I thought to myself, man, if I was doing his job, I would absolutely have that check scanner where I could just sweep that check through and the money's in my bank account. And then Bob was like, I like making the deposit. I like going to the bank. I like knowing the money's in the bank. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I'm not doing that. You're not asking me to do it. You're not saying, can I help, stamp the checks, or can I help fill out the deposit slip? You're not asking me to do any of that stuff. So why should I be giving you input into what I think I would do? It's kind of like, oh, if I was doing your job today, here's how I would do it. Mm. And I think people then look at you and think, well, shit, why aren't you doing my job today if you're so smart? So I think you have to know, like I said, you got to know when to butt out, to know and look and think, okay, yes, I might make a suggestion. Hey, check scan would be a great idea. Bob might be like, yeah, we should get that.
Yeah, I guess the thing too is if it's not interfering with anything else that he's doing, like, so if he's saying, I don't have time to be doing X, Y, and Z, yeah, it's because you're spending all this time on the checks.
Right. Exactly. And it's never that way. Like, it is never, he spends a lot of time at the business. It's one of those things. It's just that I'm always sort of looking for, automation, time saving kind of things. And he's a little more routine oriented. He's like, I like to do it the way that I've always done it. And you just have to realize that as you said, as long as the business runs well, you can't get caught up on any one of those things. He might look same way on the floor and think, I don't really like that. Whatever it is. I don't like the way we do that. But he's not at the staff meeting saying, I think we should now, I think we should be teaching hand clean from the blocks, because I think hand clean from the block is a much better exercise than doing it, picking it up off the block and then doing it from your knees. You're kind of like, hey, we know our roles. And it's the same, you think about it, listen to every great sports team. What do they always talk about?
Role.
Knowing your role, embracing your role. And I think it's no different in any good business in terms of knowing your role, embracing your role, being a good teammate, understanding that you are part of a team, and that a really big part of being a good teammate is that ability to get along with your other teammates.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's any different.
Coach, one last question, because you did bring up Thomas Plummer, because I was thinking, like, how helpful is it, or sometimes it's probably not helpful, to attend, like, to try to make it a point to go, okay, Bob, let's go together to this marketing seminar. Let's go to this business seminar. Let's go to that seminar. You come back and, it might not help, because you might be like, hey, yeah, did you hear what he said about saving time? And he doesn't want to do it that way. It might cause even more problems. What are your thoughts on attending some stuff together?
I think it's great. We've done it. We've done Plumber together. We did one of Bedros Keuilian's together years ago, fitness something or other, Fitness Millions maybe or something out in California. I think it's really good because I think it stimulates both partners to have ideas, but I think it's the same thing in terms of it goes back eventually to you are the decision maker of your role. And if you decide that this is how I want to do my job, then I feel like the other partner shouldn't be in the way of that. The other partner should look at that respectfully and say, okay, you feel strongly about this. This is the way you want to do your job. Okay, continue to do your job. Like as you said, business is good. Everything's going great. We have no reason to be unhappy. And so, but at the same time, I think you want to get out. As I said, we've both, we've had 2 individual meetings with Plummer where he's come in and consulted with us. We've both gone to the weekend seminar together where we were there. And I can't tell you what percentage of that stuff we've implemented or not implemented, but I can tell you that it made us think. Like I would tell everyone who owns a facility should have to go to hear Plummer at least every 2 years. Because even if you say, oh, he says the same things over and over again, it's because you need to hear the same things over and over again. And he sees the same mistakes over and over again. And I think getting out and getting that little bit of kind of reality therapy that a guy like Tom provides is really beneficial.
Absolutely. Good stuff. All right, Coach. Well, on that note, we'll let you go. So thanks for doing this, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right, Ant, thank you.
All right, guys, time's running out on the Perform Better huge summer sale. 40% off so many items: sleds, dumbbells, kettlebells, foam rollers, all of their best items. Guys, don't miss out on this. This is like their biggest and best sale. All right, summit season's over, but the Perform Better Functional Training Institute kicks into high gear for the fall. They got some functional dry needling. They got a speaker school, something new called the Startup School coming. And Guy Massi is doing the Developing the Modern Athlete and Client, which we're talking about with him today on the show. So check out performbetter.com for all their products and info on their educational seminars.
This is Adam.
And this is Tim.
And welcome to the Train Heroic Data-Driven Coaching segment. Today, Tim, I want to talk about the Hickson protocol.
Oh, man, that sounds fun.
Awesome. So way back in the 1970s at UIC, Go Flames.
The Flames.
They did this study where they had 8 subjects go through 10 weeks of really hard endurance training, essentially.
Yep.
And they just alternated days of cycling and running 6 days a week.
Right.
So pretty good amount of volume. But really, like, the cycling was like 5-minute intervals
intense.
of like they said maximal cycling.
2
and then
minutes of rest in between.
And then they ran like a 10K, 40 minutes or so on the opposite days.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. So the point of this is that they're just like, let's throw a blind at people and see what happens. And the answer is, well, they saw a linear increase in VO2 max over the 10-week study.
Almost a straight line.
Right. It was impressive. And then the researchers said, hey, guys, you guys are doing really well. Let's go 10 more weeks.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Hell
bro.
no.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely
not doing that. Yeah. Okay, so there's a point to this story. And the point is that, like, if you can throw volume at people and they can adapt physiologically.
Correct.
But you can still have psychological ill effects.
Yeah,
right?
you need blockers. You don't want to push your athletes to the point of no return, right? You're going to see ill effects after a certain point. Loss of motivation, things like that.
So, I mean, I'll agree, like, more is more until it's less, essentially.
Love that.
And people can probably tolerate more than they think they can in a lot of cases.
Absolutely.
Right? But don't neglect that, especially if you have, like, student athletes, that they've got a lot of stressors they're facing.
A lot of stuff outside of sport, right? You're talking about testing and you're talking about relationships developing, things like that.
Right. So, hey, when you were in collegiate football, Tim, what did you witness in your athletes in exam weeks?
Well, in exam weeks, their focus is elsewhere, so they're not going to reach optimal performance. So what do most people do? They deload, or something like that, or reload, or maybe not totally unload, but they're changing the training stress.
Sure. So, and there are studies showing that exam weeks are associated with higher levels of illness and injury and stuff like that. We don't have to get into that here. But so how would you predict, like, if I give 20 people this dose, they're going to respond in a certain way?
Right.
Is there a grand unified theory and equation that'll bring that all together? And, I think it's really hard. Like, hard. Training Peaks, our sister company, they have this really elaborate chart where you can actually predict fitness changes and performance in endurance athletes. But we're talking about really homogeneous training. Right. So it works best if you're like strictly cycling or strictly running. And it gets a little worse if you throw like your triathlete, you throw it all in there.
Yep.
And then that whole picture gets even more clouded with more variables, when you start to be thinking about a football player who has like high levels of conditioning and strength.
Yeah, think of a running back in football, right?
So if we can't have an equation that predicts all this, what can we do? And the answer is, I think, instead of like trying to measure like, oh, here's the external load and I can predict what the outcome is.
Yeah.
We have these means of measuring internal load. So like HRV, grip strength, vertical jump, any of those things.
Submaximal load, subjective survey.
Right. So we have these subjective surveys to measure psychological effects too. Right. So their perception of how they're adapting to their training. So instead of measuring these external loads, we measure the effect of the external loads.
Yes.
Which is the internal load there.
Cool.
So thanks for joining us today. That's going to do it for us. Be sure to go to trainheroic.com for your 14-day free trial. When you're talking to one of our representatives, tell them the Strength Coach Podcast sent you for 10% off a year of the Pro or Elite Edition.
It's Rachel Cosgrove. Here we are with the Business of Fitness segment, and we are talking about running your business. We are on the third part of a series that we've been doing. So we've been talking about how to earn more and worry less in your business, how to add more revenue, and the 3 ways to add revenue to your business. And yes, there are only 3 ways. And so if you missed the last 2 segments, you definitely want to head back and check those out because we already covered adding more clients, which was number one, getting clients to spend more. And now today we're going to dive into getting clients to spend more often. Okay, so how do we get our clients to spend more often? And this is the third and final way to add more revenue. And so real simple, right? So that's the main thing I want you guys to get is how simple business can be. Sometimes we get overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, I need to make more money. But when you start to look at these 3 ways and think about, well, which one of these 3 ways can I really start to improve? And is there an opportunity to add more revenue to my business? And, really start to think about those ideas, start to think out of the box of how you could do that. And so today we're talking about get clients to spend more often. So how could you get your clients to spend more often? Loyalty programs, right? Loyalty programs, getting them to come in more often is one of the first steps into getting them to spend more often. And so obviously if they're coming in, we want to try to get them coming in at least twice a week. So, what we've seen is that if people are coming in to work out at least twice a week, they're going to have, better chance of success. And so, doing some kind of a loyalty program, if you have, a punch card they could punch out, or, if you get your, maybe if they get in 8 times a month, or we use a 100 workout challenge. We do that at the halfway point of the year. And I'm going to explain that on the next segment of the podcast. So tune in to the next one. But today I'm not going to get into that yet. But something like that, right? So some kind of loyalty program where you're incentivizing your clients to come in more often, because the more often they're coming in, the better results they're going to get, and the more they're going to take advantage of. So then if you do have some of the things we talked about on the last segment of, ways, value that you're offering to them, like supplements that they can purchase, shakes that they're purchasing after their workouts, recovery tools, they're going to be more likely to purchase those things from you if they're coming in more often. So really think about, how can I get my clients to come in more often? The other way to get them to come in more often that we've had great success with is offering short-term programs. So short-term programs can be anything from, we offer OCR teams. So a lot of our existing members who are already paying us a membership fee then will pay us to join into one of our OCR teams. And with the OCR team, we offer, an extra specific skills clinic, and then they get, the team t-shirt, and they get coaching on race day. So a lot of those OCRs, and OCR is obstacle course race. I know they aren't as big all over as they are in California, but we have quite a few throughout the year. So that's anything from Spartans, Tough Mudders. We've done Rugged Maniac. This weekend we're doing the Epic series. So there's a lot of different options with that. Also powerlifting. So we actually just had our first in-house powerlifting meet this past weekend, and same thing, right? So clients can pay for an upgrade to get a very specific program. They get specific coaching on powerlifting, and they get meet day coaching, and they get the t-shirt, the team t-shirt. Of course, we always got to get them a t-shirt. So that's part of that, getting them to spend more often is giving them the opportunity to train for something specific. So OCR, powerlifting, marathons, triathlons, tactical strength challenge. That's something that we've started doing as well. So we have, an upgraded option, and people can join in to get specific training and then we have the tactical strength challenge at the gym. So these are all great ideas and what you don't realize is, yes, you're going to be generating more revenue, but you're also going to be giving your clients the opportunity to train for a new goal and challenge themselves in a different way. The other way you can do this with short-term programs is obviously with any kind of a transformation program, like Drop 2 Sizes, which is something that we've been running for a long time, and I have a book that's written based on that. We also now are running what we call the Metabolism Makeover, which is a 30-day, 4-day-a-week workout with a meal plan. So, coming up with something like that, Fit in 42 is another one of those short-term programs that you could look into. And so these are all great programs that, again, add more revenue, but also give your clients more value and give them something they can, really challenge themselves with. So start to think about that. If you aren't offering any kind of short-term programs or any kind of executive athlete programs where they're doing, you're offering races to train for, you definitely should consider doing that. So, all right, this wraps up these 3 things: adding more clients, getting clients to spend more, and then getting clients to spend more often. Those are the 3 ways for you to add more revenue to your business. Next week, I am going to next podcast, I'm going to give you guys a little deeper dive into that 100 workout challenge that I mentioned today. So make sure you tune in. And in the meantime, if you want to check out what events we have coming up, head on over to resultsfitnessuniversity.com. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.
All right, now it's time for the MariGold Foods and the MariGold Bars. Hit the gym with the Strength Coach segment. Remember, You get $10 off your first order if you put Strength Coach 10 when you go to MariGoldBars.com and get your order in there. My favorite bars, just had a Choco Nut this morning for breakfast. Speaking of Choco Nuts, I'm here with my buddy Guy Massi. And Guy is the Director of Operations, Athletic and Curricular Development for Massi Machado Strength and Conditioning. Up by me, a little bit more in the boondocks. Coach Massi also, he was on the Perform Better tour last year. He's actually speaking at Perform Better, which we're going to talk about his upcoming workshop that you won't want to miss. Some good stuff. Actually worked with the Eagles last year in preseason, and he provided some helping them with implementation and application of the Tsunami Bar. And we're going to get into that later too, about Oscillation Training, and talk all about that because Coach Massi is also a programming, application, and development advisor for the Tsunami Bar. So we usually have coffee once every 1 or 2 or 3 weeks when both of us are close by. So, Coach, thanks for doing this.
Good morning, Ant. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing all right. Well, this is the closest we're coming this week to our coffee, so I did make sure that I'm actually drinking mine right now.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
I ducked out, really, because it was my turn to buy, so I figured we'd do this online.
Okay. I'm up next, buddy. Don't worry about it.
Coach, all right. You got a great day coming up. When is that, Guy? It's November what?
It's going to be Saturday, November 17th. It's going to be at the Perform Better Functional Training Institute, and I got to tell you, Anthony, I'm pretty hyped about this one.
Yeah, obviously, because I know you, we talk a lot about this type of stuff. This is stuff that's kind of been building up with what you've been, kind of talking about a lot, and things that you get excited about, and that is developing the modern athlete and client. So give us a quick overview of some of the stuff, because I want to go deeper into some of the, especially the oscillation and some things you're doing with the Tsunami Bar, which I know is just a piece of this, but give us an overview of what this is.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm trying to get towards my own certification, the Certified Athletic Development Coach, which I feel is really important in equipping people. And this is sort of the pilot run. In designing this, and I just said, what would I have wanted somebody to tell me 20 years ago? What would have helped me in the course of my career? So in sitting down and looking at this, I came to a realization also, and this industry is relatively new. I mean, we're definitely not fully evolved. No. The concept of gyms and trainers and these types of things and developing clients and athletes is relatively new. But at the same time, before we get an opportunity to evolve, we're noticing that there's various differences in the training terrain based upon people's needs. So I just want to bring people to a place of understanding and hope they walk out of there with some new tools for their toolbox, in understanding that people have expectations, and sometimes a client and athlete's reality may not be our reality, but certainly we have to meet them somewhere in between.
Absolutely. And you start this whole thing out with kind of adopting this performance and longevity mindset. And I just think that's so important. I just want you to kind of expand on what that means to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Early on in my career, I pushed the performance aspect, and I'm guilty, as many new trainers might have been, in being a younger coach at the time, and just worrying about that performance aspect. Over time, I've really adopted the mentality of performance and longevity. And basically, in simplest terms, it's if you can perform at a high level, but you can only do it for short periods of a time, and you're consistently getting injured, or you're underperforming, you have overuse issues, then there's really no sense in the training programs themselves. So I would just like to invite people into the mindset of you can progress an athlete, you can progress a client, you can make them better, but at the same time, you have to have that underlying foundational mentality that has to last for as close to ever as possible.
Coach, I know you do a lot of, you're really attentive to your people, and you follow them, you follow up, you spend a lot of time. Although what's cool, you're not really using a lot of technology. I mean, first of all, it was even hard to get you on Skype, for Christ's sake. But you're not using a lot of you're really and you're talk about in the trenches. You're certainly in the trenches. You're not somebody who's just sitting around running things. Talk to me about your intake, because I know you have a pretty intensive process with your intake and your assessments. Give us an overview of what you're doing.
Sure. Well, first of all, you mentioned technology, and I think there's a gentleman who recently wrote a book about, don't collect data just for the sense of collecting data. And I certainly believe that, just don't do something because it's flashy. We're sort of middle of the road with technology. Obviously, we have a heart rate monitor system. We also work with like a center of pressure, a balance plate by Vista Medical. But as far as technology, that's the degree. We do some dartfish, we do some biomechanics filming, we have an align-a-bod, things like that. But really, in the intake process that we've developed, we just feel like the intimate approach to the client and athlete is a telltale. Because when you're doing your intake, you're not only physiologically examining this client or athlete, you're really engaging in an emotional process. So simplifying the process while connecting with that client or athlete on the initial intake is supremely important. We're also on a discovery to see whereabouts their education level stands. Because believe it or not, Anthony, you can have a professional athlete who may or may not say squat proficiently, right? I mean, there's a possibility that they may or may not lunge correctly, or they'll have an anatomical limitation that they've been ignoring for a long time. So just because you have a particular degree of client or athlete come in, that intake process is essential for biomechanical reasons, for emotional reasons, and for us, which is very, very, very important, determining their level of education when it comes to their own good development. Also, recognizing, may there be some sort of learning disability present? Is this guy display or present with, maybe he has an ADHD, an auditory processing delay? Now listen, Anthony, we're not PhDs, we're not educators in the sense of being teachers, but certainly learning these things in the initial stages will help you program better, in the sense that, is this guy going to be a tactile learner? Is this guy going to need more demonstration? Is he more hands-on? Is she going to require video? Is she going to require more time? It's just this big puzzle that makes you more and more successful with every intake that you perform. And you know what? You don't have to spend $1 gazillion in technology.
Coach, how are you finding that out, though? Because that seems to be stuff that's really kind of hard, even to ask, hey, do you have any learning disability? I mean, how are you finding these things out?
Well, over time, you sort of develop the ability to recognize some of the telltale signs. And, I'm privileged. I'm married to an educator. She's a CEO of a private school, and I pick her brain all the time. But when you kind of get the sense that maybe somebody's not present in the moment all the time, might be veering, might be wandering, might not necessarily be paying attention to you, but be looking at the things on the wall. When it comes to student athletes, quite honestly, Anthony, we've adopted part of our intake to be, hey, mom, hey, dad, let me ask you something. Is there any learning disability we should know about present? Therefore, we can effectively manage the development of the child. And nobody gets offended, Anthony. As a matter of fact, they appreciate that concern. And believe me, buddy, when you know there's an issue present, you can certainly make your job and their development a whole lot easier.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are obviously, the more you know, like you said, that's getting a little bit deeper. So, Guy, what are you doing from a movement perspective in terms of your assessments?
We're doing we say nose to toes approach. We're actually looking for any neurological implications also. We start right from a toe creep and see if people have pain and arches of the feet, and we move all the way up. We look for the general stuff, which is why, I'm such a big fan of Mike. You and I talk about him all the time. He's basically simplified the functional process, and we just go joint by joint. We're looking for these anatomical limitations. We're trying to find out if it's something that's just movement-based. Is it congenital? Is it related to the sense that we need to make a PT referral? And obviously, if there's pain present, Anthony, you want to get the person to a physician. So we're just moving up. We're moving from the toes all the way up to the nose. And more importantly, we're trying to look at that in all the spheres of movement. We want to make sure we cover all of the planes during the intake process. We're not just going to have somebody move along the sagittal plane. We're going to have everybody moving through multi-planar movement to get a look at them that way. A lot of times we get inside a box and we perform assessments that are, very linear, and we miss a lot of things. We miss a lot of the anti-rotation. We miss a lot of a person's capability to actually control rotation. So we look at this as if it's an avatar. We take a person and we want to see them in full movement. We don't just stick with the baseline FMS stuff. We've lumped some things onto our intake that has proven to be very, very effective and important for us. And I'm going to love to share some of those things with the folks that come out to this seminar.
Absolutely. Coach, I want to get into, you're doing education for the Tsunami Bar, and it's, not just a bar that moves. There's a lot more to it. And you actually, like I said before, worked with the Philadelphia Eagles last year, working with their training team to talk to them about introducing oscillation and amplitude and some of that stuff. So, Coach, what is oscillation from your perspective?
Well, first I have to say Josh Hanks and Keith Gray and the strength staff out at the Eagles, that are highly capable strength staff who took the introduction to this type of training and they ran with it. So kudos to them, because obviously something went right last year. And I think in order to kind of tell this story, you have to know the story. Moons ago, I was breaking my own PVC pipes, trying to figure this oscillation thing out. We were using the standard barbell and, suspending kettlebells from bands like everybody does. But I realized risk versus reward was very disproportionate. Anthony, if you try to make somebody do a box jump like that, you think we're going to have a problem?
Yeah.
Maybe. So as I went through my career, I just didn't have the time or the resources to sort of develop this. And this marriage was kind of strange. I reached out to them. Tsunami Bar reached out to me, and we found out that I had a particular degree of knowledge in this type of training. And it's right, Anthony, it's not just a flexible barbell. It really is a dynamic training platform. It's revolutionary. The industry should really start, tooling around with it, to say the least. And part of my presentation at Perform Better seminar last year was getting people hands-on with this. And it was really awesome to see people revitalized when they were touching these bars and just thinking about the concepts that they can employ by putting this bar into their programming. So when people talk about oscillation, oscillation in its purest definition is basically, movement around a center point. In the case of these bars, that's basically how the end of that bar moves around its center point. The amplitude aspect, just think about, that's a fancy word for bending, the bend in the bar. And what's cool about these bars that they've created is they have different levels. They go from what we call the noodle, which only accepts like 7.5 pounds per side and is fantastic for rehabilitation and also for throwing programs, all the way up and through this level 5, Anthony. And you can get 5 plates per side on a level 5 oscillating flexible barbell. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, geez. Coach, but what's the benefit of it? What is this doing for me?
Yeah. So, the benefits are many, many fold, and they literally need to be programmed and applied correctly. They can be utilized for every sport that is imaginable. For example, if perhaps you are building a program that is concentrating on strength and you're in that strength phase as opposed to a power phase, there would be certain protocols you'd put into place that you would want the athlete to overcome amplitude of the bar or bend of the bar more so than the oscillation, because you'd be focused on a more so 1 RM explosive strength movement. In other veins, I'll be honest with you, for me, I just break it down to dynamic capacity. Dynamic capacity is basically the person's ability to command their anatomical structure, resistance, and biomechanics in movement. In other words, how you can move at gameplay and life speed. So when you utilize these bars, you begin to develop inter and intramuscular coordination that you never really had before. You wake up sort of pseudo-dormant motor units. You wake up stabilizing muscles you've never utilized before. And there's so much to be said about this. We'll have Chris Pori is actually posting a very, very simple move your feet video on the September newsletter. And we just have one simple demonstration of how this flexible platform allows you to move while you're handling resistance. Now, Anthony, I'm not talking about like it's as simple as just put it on your back and do a lunge. In this video, we're going to demonstrate how you can do a laterally stepping overhead press while utilizing this flexible barbell, something I wouldn't recommend with the old conventional platform. So the benefits are many, many fold. It just teaches people to build a better biomechanical slot. It teaches you to remain in your proper biomechanics. That inter and intramuscular coordination, Anthony, is so key. And the development and the results we've had here with both our control and experiment groups versus each other has been quite astounding.
Coach, would in kind of the I don't want to say Boyle speak, but would a lot of this be working, some of this idea of like anti-rotation, anti-flexion, anti-extension? Is that what we're doing as well with this? Are we like in learning to control that movement around the center point and that amplitude, that bend? Are we also, is that what we're doing? We're kind of working that anti-programming?
Oh yeah. And and Mike has accused me of being a little too complicated, so I should keep it simple. So here's the simple. And if you can excuse the curse, if you don't use the bars correctly, they're going to hand you your ass. That's just sort of where we're at. And even from the most simple load, even if it's a Zercher load of one of these flexible barbells or a back load, just standing there in static is going to work those static muscles. You have to be able to control your rotation, and even trying to take a step with this, you have to be able to control your flexion and extension. Whether or not you're moving in an actual exercise, just by bearing this type of platform, you're going to have to control flexion, extension, rotation. And it's not the same as hanging kettlebells from a barbell because A, this is safer and you're going to use lighter weight. B, if you need to dump this, Anthony, you've seen these bars. You could dump them and you're not going to have a problem with injury. So it's always taxing these deep abdominal muscles. It's helping to develop the quadratus lumborum. I mean, this bar is helping you develop more so that trunk-torso relationship than just focusing on core, which may at times be too narrow-minded, because really the way our trunk relates to our extremities gets completely taxed when utilizing these barbells. So yes, in Boyle speak, Boyle-esque, you're going to get all of that merely by walking with the bar on your back.
Coach, did you talk about a platform too? I don't know about this platform. Is there a new platform as well you're talking about?
I said that if you look at the barbell, and I think Tsunami Bar themselves have kind of just presented it as a bar, it's actually a revolutionary new developmental platform. So that's what I meant by that. The bar itself.
Yes.
And it really is, because if you look at it, and I'm going to be honest about it, if you look at it as just another barbell, there's just going to be some sort of novelty to it. And eventually people will take it and they'll put it in the corner, like any other piece of gym equipment you didn't like or didn't learn to use. If you look at it with the mentality that you can kill so many things, the underlying components that relate to that overall dynamic capacity. So now that you can infuse it into your speed training, your stability training, your strength, your power, your agility, all of these things, this barbell system helps to more effectively, more efficiently, and more quickly develop those elements that lend to that overall ability to play at game speed, work at life speed, and incidentally, Anthony, persistently assist your body to find positions of advantage so you can reduce that risk of injury.
Coach, how does this work with traditional barbell or, strength exercises though? Is somebody able to kind of start on the Tsunami right away, or is it like, okay, no, we're developing a base of strength first with the traditional work that we do, or are you jumping right into some of this oscillation training right away? Is there a progression with it?
Well, theoretically, we could go into programming all day long about where it belongs, and certainly I'll cover some of that at the seminar. But I feel that if you're going to integrate this into programming, you need a very, very nominal, what I call CNS prep cycle. It could be a couple of days, Anthony, and what it really comes to is teaching somebody to just manage this new type of resistance they're going to have, and you could basically integrate it or implement it into programming wherever you'd like, in the sense that I tell people to toggle it a lot. So in other words, implement it where you have some of the conventional rigid barbell training or rigid method training and infuse that Tsunami Bar into it. There's no danger in putting these bars in someone's hands and getting them to utilize it rather quickly, but loading it and having them move it quickly, that's another story. Because what you have to understand here, the beauty and the efficacy that you can achieve, the desired result that you can achieve from these bars is the speed component. Because it moves like it moves, you are able to force that amplitude and oscillation and continually train your body to overcome that. Probably for me, one of the key components here is I can kill concentric, eccentric, and isometric phases of training in like one set. Well, how can you do that? Simple stuff. You focus on a particular tempo and cadence. You could do your quote unquote pause reps. You can pull down slowly on the bar in the eccentric and say a squat. You can come out of the hole on it hard in that squat, and you could perform an isometric hole at the top of these contractions. So you get a lot of work done over a short period of time. The metabolic efficacy is also incredible. You want to talk about heart rates jumping, Anthony? The fat burning effects have been wonderful. But to answer your question plainly and in short, you could begin to utilize these bars in a relatively nominal amount of time.
So yeah, how just with this idea, one more question on that was this idea of jumping into it. What is the learning curve in terms of kind of understanding and learning to handle this kind of new this. I mean, I've only used it like once or twice or had it in my hand at your place, but like it's so different. It's so weird. Like at first you're like, man, what this is, especially if you've already done other barbell training. What have you found in terms of this ramp up with people? How long does it take before they're starting to kind of really get an understanding of it, a feel for it?
Well, I got to tell you, Anthony, it's strange. It's like we as humans are afraid of things that we don't understand, right? So when we first look at it, we're like, oh boy, what am I going to do with this thing? And I think that the learning curve is so nominal as far as the utilization. Okay, so you could basically get someone and tell them how to load this barbell, which isn't difficult at all. You put plates on the side and you put their lock collars on. But to get the actual full application out of it, when I say full application, I mean for it to really do what it's supposed to do, that takes a little time. But even in the worst case scenario, if everybody replaced their conventional lifts and integrated this into it, they'll be way ahead of the curve. So the time to learning and utilization of the bar itself to, let's say, do a training session with it is nominal. You get the bar, you unpack it, you read the instructions, you load it like any other barbell with the exception of the heavier bars, which have pins, hitch pins in the end. And then you're off and you're running. It's really the application which is key. And quite honestly, Anthony, that's where I'm working a bit with Tsunami Bar, and we had butt heads in the past, but now we're on the same page. It's about the education. You know, if you just hand somebody this tool, which should revolutionize our industry, and you just hope they're going to do the right thing with it, that's not good. So now that everybody's on the same page, you know, we're saying, hey, make believe you're me, and I knew nothing about this. How are we going to help people to utilize this? So now we have people getting it, we have people picking it up, we have people utilizing it, and we have people saying that they really don't know how they've been affecting their programs in the past without it. So it's sort of like the microwave. I mean, you know, it's convenient, right? We never thought about it before you had one, and now that you have one, you're using it all the time.
Yeah. Coach, what's the difference? I know I said that was my last question, but what's the difference with the weights in terms of, let's say I can deadlift 1.5 my body weight, all right? And I'm pretty happy with that. And now I start using Tsunami Bar for the deadlift, right? Let's just say. What's the difference in the weights? Am I using less weight on this, or have you found that people are eventually getting to the same percentages? How is that working?
Well, you know, you want to utilize the oscillation and amplitude of the bar to move it at speed to develop that inter and intramuscular coordination. However, I will tell you that you're generally loading the bar with a lot less weight. One of the reasons is basically just getting acclimated and maintaining those positive biomechanical slots when lifting. So if, for instance, you're working on a deadlift and you want to get to a target goal, you would basically sit down with your percentages and figure out where you need to be. Because remember, Anthony, on this, you're going to have to overcome the amplitude or the bend of the bar to even perform that particular lift, which is why, you know, a 6-inch box is usually where we perform this from. There are pretty specific applications, for instance, let's say for an Olympic lifter, to utilize these bars to develop the speed of their snatch, let's say. So we have a progression where we have percentages that teach them to basically overcome that amplitude, and they start to develop their slots much better and develop speed. So when you revert back to what do I do on a traditional lift, certainly you're going to load it with a lot less weight because you're going to want to move it with speed to develop the stabilizing muscles and to develop the overall movement.
Coach, have you found that, like, for example, I mean, we've talked about kind of using some of the water and some of the sand training, so like a slosh pipe, which, you know, for the most part aren't really, I don't know if there's anybody out there that actually sells slosh pipes. You just go to Home Depot and make them. But like I've used a lot of the sandbag stuff. And I've told you and I've talked about this, Josh Henkin and DVRT. They've done an amazing job with the education in terms of understanding it's not just a bag with sand in it. There's a lot going on, and they do a lot of different programming, especially with, I love it because for me to do like even a clean on a barbell, it's a little hard with my left wrist. And the sandbags allow me to kind of really get some different cleans in from different positions. Have you found that this works well with some of that other type of training?
Well, I mean, certainly, you know, I give a lot of credit to Josh and the guys over there because they took a rather elemental tool and they recognized the need in the market, which was the education. I mean, for crying out loud, he's brilliant. He put education to the forefront, and it's like, it's a sandbag, man. I mean, you know, he says it himself. So I certainly appreciate what he did. I'm not a big fan of slosh pipes only because, you know, some people say, oh, the unpredictability is great. Well, I could tell you some horror stories about heavy slosh pipes where people actually get injured with them. So I'm not such a proponent about that. And I'll talk more about that at the seminar about the pros and cons of these other, what they say, unbalanced or unpredictable platforms. The Tsunami Bar is fairly predictable in the sense that, you know, it's going to move a particular way and you're just persistently moving it with speed and overcoming that amplitude and oscillation. My wrist mobility is not where it's at anymore. We're both hockey players, Anthony. So at some point in our life, I think we probably broke our wrists, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So look, the good news is they actually made a standard grip version of this. So there's not most of the bars are fat grip. Now they're making standard grip versions. The standard grip version actually has a rotating collar at the end, which is quite interesting. And because of the flexibility, Anthony, think about it. You're not so much locked down as you would be on a standard rigid conventional barbell. And because of the flexibility, that amplitude, you're actually able to snap those elbows underneath, man, and get a pretty clean finish. So the adaptability to most of these lifts is awesome. And, if it comes to the purist who wants to clean up their clean, or a purist who wants to get more speed in their snatch, whatever the case may be, or the clean and jerk, these bars are fantastic for helping them develop a really clean slot, develop the speed, and honestly, Anthony, get past these transitions that are so critical for these highly performing Olympic lifters.
Absolutely. Coach, really quick, are you going to be doing, I know you got a long day at Perform Better that day. Are you going to be going over a few of the lifts on that day?
Oh yeah. We're going to have a ton of hands-on. I believe that to have to listen to me talk for long periods of time would only induce some sort of coma.
No, it's why our breakfasts don't last that long.
So, we're going to have a lot of hands-on. Anthony, my passion now is to lead, teach, and develop, honestly. I look back and I, like you yourself, I was the guy with the book in my hand, and I was just looking around screaming for a mentor, and looking for somebody to help me out. And Perform Better has done such a great job. Strength Coach Podcast, great job. You're bringing education out to people. So I'm going to spend as much time as possible as putting people's hands on things, on these Tsunami Bars. We're also going to get into the gym. We're going to talk about adapting lifts for performance training. We're so hung up in things have been done the same way for so long. It's time to evolve. And we always talk about this, Anthony. You don't ever want to compete. You want to create, and that's important. So we'll get them in the gym. We'll teach them how to have engaging cadences with their athletes and clients. We have a segment in there called Scream Machine, and we go over whether or not that's a good approach in all atmospheres. We're going to spend a lot of time in the Functional Training Institute, in practicals, breaking up the day. And you know what, man? Just having a lot of fun, meeting new people, enjoying new faces, and hopefully equipping everybody to go away with at least one thing that they've been doing right, doing wrong, or that they can implement now.
All right, good stuff. Coach, I want to just finish up with dynamic capacity. You were talking about dynamic capacity, the sum of all parts. You're talking about commanding movement. And for me, this is, you talk about this a lot in our other conversations, is just kind of being able, the conundrum we all face is that transfer of training, right? And I feel like your ideas on dynamic capacity are probably in line with how do we get that transfer of training. Can you just go a little deeper into dynamic capacity and how you're training that?
Yeah, sure. A couple of months back, I actually wrote an article for Perform Better's newsletter, which really breaks it down, okay? And there are people that are either on this page with me or not. And I just look at the simplest things. For example, if you get a client who moves a box from a shipping table to another shipping table all day long, and all he's doing is rotating with his trunk, eventually he's going to develop some sort of back problem, right? If we can tell him and teach him that, hey man, move your feet, change your base, start to begin with the simplest inference of what dynamic capacity is, that'll begin to change the way people move. But I started looking at my programming, and I have all these performance tanks, right? So I have a curriculum for speed, for agility, for power, for plyometrics, for strength. And I said, what's it all leading to? What does it all mesh as? I want this to come together as this big performance puzzle, but a pretty picture. So how do I start programming with the ultimate goal of this dynamic capacity. And what that really means is, how do you perform at game speeds? How do you perform in life and not get injured? For example, agility programming, let's say people do some lateral work in shuffle, Anthony. A lot of times all around the country, and I've been guilty of it in the past, they accept clicking of the heels in a regular lateral shuffle. You know what I'm talking about there, right? Mm-hmm. So if I embed and etch a pattern where nobody can bring their feet closer than, let's say, 12 inches apart, and I focus on that, the end game will be their ability to move in space with proper dynamic capacity in a game that they won't ever let their feet come to what I call zero or together. Because nothing good happens during a game at zero. It's teaching the body to persistently seek for positions of advantage. If your brain-body connection feels a cleat gets stuck in the turf, I want the body-brain connection to immediately default to, I got to get out of this position. Because as you know, as well as everybody else knows, you don't need contact to get an ACL tear. Sometimes inertia will be that perpendicular force and you get shearing. So everything we do has to relate. Now, the degree of transference, Anthony, that's still the question. To what degree is everything we're doing really lend to that dynamic capacity? And that's been a persistent trip around and around the mountain trying to figure out what's most effective, especially when you're pairing things together. I think everybody in developing the performance and longevity mindset should also understand the ultimate goal is dynamic capacity. And I know you appreciate that, because I know a lot of people don't like to hear this, but that's probably more important than how much weight you're throwing around with your feet still or laying on a bench. Now, numbers are important, Anthony. It's what we make our living on, right? But when somebody comes in and says, I just want my kid to bench squat and deadlift and make it into the 1,000-pound club, we're missing a piece of the pie. Well, what about your kid's performance on the field? What about his safety? What about his ability to play for long periods of time? That's that dynamic capacity, performance, and longevity mindset. And there are ways to lend to dynamic capacity, one of which I believe firmly is with the introduction of this Tsunami Bar now, because you can do things with it in motion that you can't do with other things. And we're going to cover that. You could do speed training with the Tsunami Bar in a Zercher load. You could practice takeoffs with the Tsunami Bar in a Zercher load. You can do lateral speed with the Tsunami Bar on your shoulders. I'm not a big fan of bilateral back squatting, and I don't know who really is. So I had stayed away for a very, very long time. I even had checked in with my mentor, Dr. Catarizano, down at Furman University, and got his feelings about that load during the bilateral back squat. He's actually the guy who did the studies on the bilateral back squat and what gets engaged at what depths. I got to tell you something, Anthony. I was a front squatter. I was a goblet squatter, one leg rear elevated split squatter, until this bar came around. Now it's safe to put it on your back because the load is parasagittal as opposed to right down that spine. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So here we have this revolutionary new platform that we can put into our protocols that lend to overall dynamic capacity.
Loving it. And that was definitely a handful there. There's a lot here. Guys got a lot of articles on Perform Better, and this is going to be a great day in Providence, November 17th, right, guys? 17th?
Sir.
17th. This is Saturday. Up at the Perform Better Functional Training Institute. Lots of stuff going on. So, Guy, thanks for coming on and kind of going over some of these things and kind of giving us an introduction into this oscillation and amplitude. I will say you've done a great job of taking some of the 25-cent words out that you have a hard time. You have a hard time with. So, so we always break your balls on that. But no, great job simplifying some of this stuff. You've definitely given me a little bit more of an insight into some of this stuff. So, Coach, thanks for coming on today.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. And I'll be bringing my 16-year-old son to serve as a translator.
Very cool. All right, that's going to do it for episode 238 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Remember, you can try StrengthCoach.com out 3 days, just $1. You'll have access to all the articles, videos, and programs, as well as the best forum on the net. It's the only place to have full access to Coach Boyle. He's on every single day. Go to StrengthCoach.com. Special thanks to Chris Parker and the folks over at Perform Better. Remember, right now, huge summer sale, 40% off all their best items. And the Perform Better Functional Training Institute kicks in to high gear, functional dry kneading, speaker school, startup school, and Guy Massey's developing the modern athlete coming up this fall. Thanks to Coach Boyle and Guy Massey for sharing their insights and philosophies into the world of strength and conditioning and performance enhancement. Thanks to Adam Doughty, Tim Robinson, and Train Heroic. Head over to trainheroic.com. Guys, start your free 14-day trial. If you're not doing online training, you're missing out. There's a great revenue stream there, and they make it really easy. Tell them Anthony sent you. You'll save 10% off your first year of the Train Heroic Pro and Elite editions. Thanks to Rachel Cosgrove for the Results Fitness University Business and Fitness segment. Check them out at resultsfitnessuniversity.com. Great cooking functional movement system. Check them out at functionalmovement.com. Remember, next episode, I got the whole shebang from the last series. Thanks to MariGold Bars, high quality protein for all premium ingredients. Grass-fed protein, gluten-free, organic ingredients, non-GMO, no preservatives. I mean, you got to keep these things in the fridge. And there's low sugar, and they taste great. Guys, I have one every single day. Check them out at marigoldbars.com. Use the code STRENGTHCOACH10 to get $10 off your first order. All right, my name's Anthony Renner. Go to continuefit.com for all my stuff. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you next time.